Okay, hey everyone, Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. I hope you're doing well. Coming on here and doing a little review slash rundown of the pretty much now completed soundtrack to the Abel Tesfaye Weeknd television series, The Idol. The show came to a dramatic finale from what I understand. Pretty much every episode had some original music attached to it, and I thought it would be good to go over the music that was included in the show because you guys were always hounding me to review more soundtracks. This might be a decent place to start, maybe cut my teeth a little bit in the soundtrack field. I'm new to this reviewing thing. You gotta give me a break. I also thought I'd come through here and do a little cosplay. I look like I should be on the show. If I walked on set, I look like somebody would be like, hey, are you the idol? Get a load of this guy. Looks like he's the idol. This guy thinks he's the idol, boss. Can you tell I've watched like every episode 5 times? Okay, look, there's a lot of new original music attached to this show from what I understand. They're all pretty much up on streaming. Let's kind of go over the major tracks, major musical players. I'll give you what I think about them and maybe an overall view at the end of it. We have Popular with Playboi Carti, of course Abel, Madonna in the mix too. This is handily my favorite song through the whole series. I think it's the closest thing to a front-to-back, well-groomed and formulated pop bop with some throwback 2000s and 90s undertones in the mix too. Abel sounds great, Madonna sounds great, Carti even jumps in here and there with some funny little refrains and flows that don't derail the whole thing, but at least give it a somewhat of a modern punch, that kind of, fun little rage rap flair. It's a quality cut, it works, and it's great that Abel was able to craft such a good song with a complete and utter legend, that being Madonna. But from here, things do begin to go downhill because we also have Dollhouse with Lily Rose Depp, who obviously played a key and a major role in the series, but musically, I can't say I'm impressed here. This pretty much sounds like a Lana song from the Born to Die era, like give me a break. It is such an unabashed and sad ripoff to the point where it sounds like they grabbed Lana from the early 2010s, threw her in a time machine, brought her to today just so she could ghostwrite this track. The cover of My Sweet Lord from the wonderful George Harrison, redone by Troye Sivan. This is a surprising inclusion, and personally I love how much of a jubilee the original song sounds like, but none of that really carries over onto this cover version. This rendition of it sounds more like a very sterile synthetic hymn from another dimension, where the emotion of the George Harrison song, originally speaking, was just not really taken into account at all. While this version is certainly dramatic, it is not nearly as fun to listen to. It may have complemented the show, though. There's something similarly stiff and lifeless about Abel's cover of John Lennon's Jealous Guy later into the series as well. Going further, we also have Susanna's Son with Crocodile Tears. Pretty straightforward piano ballad, decent performance. It's very lighthearted. It's kind of sweet. It's a little quaint. Reminds me of Regina Spektor's early years a little bit, but kind of watered down. Personally, I think her vocal performance on the song Family later is much more dramatic and compelling, even if the beat on that track is kind of flat. We also have Like a God from The Weeknd, where vocally it feels like Abel is really throwing it back to those House of Melons and Kissland days, but over some very thin 80s synths and quite possibly one of the plainest beats I think he's ever had on one of his cuts. It's a decent song overall, it's just kind of underproduced. With False Idols featuring Lil Baby as well as, again, Susanna's Son, we have a very confessional and passionate verse from Baby about fame and the price of fame. The instrumental, once again, is dark and heavily layered and moody, and sounds like it's Abel kind of giving himself another opportunity to plug back into his older self, which, again, goes to show just how much, like, the narratives and the characters of this show kind of circle back into the sort of storytelling that we remember Abel for in his early years as The Weeknd. We have Lily Rose Depp kind of taking the reins on one of the girls. Again, can we get a song from her on this record that does not sound like a Lana track? In a way, I guess Fill the Void does fill that void. It's not a super strong song, but it doesn't sound like Lana, and does have one of the better vocal performances on the entire record. And once again, Abel's lyrics on this track just read to me as like, this whole show is an excuse for him to write old Weeknd songs again, sometimes with an 80s flair and some Phil Collins-sized drum fills, like in the case of A Lesser Man. The dramatic and airy ballad Take Me Back scratches a similar itch, but honestly, I think this is one of the best combos of production, songwriting, and vocal performance on the entire project. Abel really nails it on the chorus, and Mike Dean does a fantastic job of pulling together these cinematic synth layers throughout the track. Mike Dean also gets another chance to shine with the kind of synth sax odyssey, Devil's Paradise. Next, Moses Sumney is a pretty big surprise in this soundtrack with Get It Before. This song really infuses a bit of soul, funk, and finesse into this entire soundtrack, plus the instrumentation and the mix sounds way warmer and way more sensual and sweet than anything else in the track list. For a show and a bunch of songs that are so very clearly obsessed with sex, very little of what's here sounds sexy and, again, warm or genuinely sensual in any way. However, that is very much the vibe that Sumney's loose grooves and kind of playful falsetto vocal harmonies are very much giving off. Of course, there's also Double Fantasy featuring Future, which is kind of a hip-hop and old-school 80s synth-pop type blend with Abel here and there doing his best Michael Jackson impression. It's not my favorite cut here, but it is certainly far from the worst. Overall, that's kind of the soundtrack. Nothing too mind-blowing or groundbreaking for Abel. Some solid songs here and there. Some pieces that are clearly just meant to not really be enjoyed too much outside of the context of the show. And the vibes on this thing overall pretty much sound like post-nut regret, sadness, and a lot of cocaine. And I have no plans to come back anytime soon, outside of maybe a few cuts. But yeah, those are my thoughts. If you've heard the soundtrack, what are yours? Let me know. Mwah. Over here next to my head is another video you can check out. Hit that up or the link to subscribe to the channel. Anthony Fantano, Abel, the idol of forever.